had a question come in where someone wanted to detect when the close of the bar is either like in the lower 25% of the total length of the bar, or if the closing price is in the upper 25% of the bar, such as that. And yeah, actually, let me reverse my colors here. Okay, there we go. So the filled bars are down bars and the hollow bars are up bars. So that's to keep with the very old traditional black and white printed charts on paper back in the old days. So yeah, so there we go. So let me kind of repeat what we're looking for here. So we're looking to find when the closing price of the bar is within the upper 25%, or if the closing price for the bar is in the lower 25% of the bar. So the way we can accomplish this, it's not that BloodHound was designed to do this, but because BloodHound does have the ATR as a measurement unit, we can actually do this. So because the ATR is doing the mathematical calculations for BloodHound, and so so we are actually able to use BloodHound to actually accomplish this. But quite often, if you're looking for something very kind of specific like this, usually you'll need an indicator to do that for you. And in this case, we are using the ATR indicator to do the the mathematics for us, and luckily we have BloodHound built to use the ATR as a measurement unit there. So let's see. Let me get BloodHound open here. So I already have BloodHound on this chart down here below, right? And let me take these moving averages off. All right, so we'll open up BloodHound here, use the button up on top of the chart. And before I get started, let me give BloodHound give this file a name. And I'll use, let's see, today is May 1st. May already. All right, there we go. So there's today's date for today's workshop. And let's see, so I'm going to switch over to the logic board, and I'll create a new logic template here. Alright, so the close at the 25% top or bottom of the bar. There we go. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to have to be doing some comparisons here. So the top of the bar here, so like for this bar example, for the top of the bar, the high price always represents the top of the bar. So we're going to be checking to see how close the close price is to the high price of the bar, and to see if the bar closed near the 25% of the bottom of the bar, we're going to be comparing the close price to the low price of the bar to see if we closed downward. Alright, so we're going to grab a comparison solver to make those comparisons, right? Comparing the close price to either the high of the bar or to the low of the bar to see if the bar closed within those 25% of the height of the top of the bottom of the bar. Alright, let's open this up a little bit. There we go. Alright, so the first thing we want to do, let's see, is we're going to set indicator A to, let's see, I guess I'll set it to the closed price. And indicator B is going to be set to the low price and the high price of the bar. So once again, we'll set our type to price. So I'm just going to make a decision here that I guess when the closing price is near the top of the bar, I'll generate a long signal, and if the closing price is near the bottom of the bar, I'll generate a short signal. To me, that sounds pretty standard. So for the price type long, so for a long signal, we're going to be using the high price of the bar, and for a short, we're going to be using the low price of the bar, like so. Alright, now the next thing is we need to go into the difference area, and we're not using ticks. We want to know a percentage of the bar length. So instead of ticks, we're going to use the ATR to calculate the percentage. And the ATR period needs to be set to 1. So we want a 1 bar period for the ATR. So let me change the other one down here to ATR. Set that to a period of 1. Alright, so a little brief explanation of what the ATR is telling us. So what the ATR is going to do is, let me use wrong object. There we go. This line here. So the ATR is going to measure it's going to measure let's draw it here. Okay. So an ATR period of 1, right? So we're using an ATR with a period of 1. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the total length of this bar, and it's going to break it down. So the total length is going to be 100%. And that's what the ATR basically does. Is it takes, however many bars are in your period for the ATR, and it averages them all out, and the average length of all those bars within your period represents 100%. And it tells you if the length of the bars are above or below the average. So an ATR value of 1 represents an ATR value of 1 represents 100%. And since we're setting the ATR period to 1, then the ATR is basically taking the length of this bar and converting it into a percentage. So now if I look for a value of 0.25 ATR, then I'm looking for, basically that's 25% of this individual bar here that we're looking at. So now I'm not sure if I need to use 20.25 ATR of this or 0.75. I might need to use 0.75. I'll find out here in a minute just by kind of experimenting, but I think, just going off the top of my head, I think I just need to find 25%. So, and let's see. So I've already got my large amount and small amount set to 0.25 ATRs, or 25% of that bar length. And let's see, I think The only thing I need to do now is probably just adjust my outputs here. Since I'm not getting any kind of output, let's see what happens here. And so that's actually a little backwards. Yeah, okay, so here's what I actually need to do. So I know, so that right with the long output, what I can see here, what this looks like is it looks like it's giving me a long output. When, oh, actually, that's the wrong one. Let's try this. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so I'm just going to look at these and see. So it looks like all the bars that are marked, right, the closing price is near the top of the bar. Yeah, great. I think that's it. Okay. I think, yeah, so that works, but I'm going to try something. I'm actually going to flip my prices around. So I'm going to actually put, let's see, I'm going to put the high price up here and the low price, and then set the closing price down here in the indicator B section, and see what that does. So that also works. And okay, that's not what I'm expecting. So let's try that. Nope. So I'm going to try 0.75. So I'm getting a reverse output here. It's interesting. So I'm going to try and reverse my prices up here. So so you can see here that the closing price, right, is near the bottom of the candle. So I'm getting a long output when the closing price is near the 25% bottom of the candle. And so I'm just going to play around here a little bit and see if I can change this long output to a short output. And let's see. So what? Okay, so I'm gonna swap my prices here and see if that makes a difference here. So put the low in there, and put the high in there, and yeah. I think that does it. I'm going to put my ATR back down to 0.25. So I'm just looking through the chart to see if there's any bars here painted that don't look correct. And let's see. Yeah, those guys don't look correct. Okay. Let's see. Maybe I need to put that 75% back in there. Okay, so it doesn't look like I'm getting the exact results I was hoping to get from out of this solver, but I am getting something that I can work with here. Let's see. Oh, okay. I'm going to put everything back to the way I originally had it, and all right. No, that's not right. Let's see. I had something working pretty good. I just had to reverse the long to a short output before. So let me. All right, there we go. I think that's looking a lot better. Yeah. Okay. So let's review this here. So let me stretch this out here. Okay. So now that I can visually see on the chart that I'm getting a long output, right, when the closing price is near the bottom 25% of the bar. And, it took a little bit of experimenting to get, to get at least something working here. So now I am getting a long output when the closing price is near the bottom of the bar. So I will have to reverse that, swap that to a long. Swap that to a short. However, first, now that I got this working, now I'm going to go through and kind of explain how this is working inside of the comparison solver here. Okay, so we have A, right? So this is the only out of the long output and short output, right? I only have one output here turned on. So this will help me kind of understand how this is all working. So we have A is greater than B. So for the long here, since we're dealing with a long output, so we have the high price is greater than B, and B is our closing price, and it's greater than B by 75% of the ATR, or 75% of the bar or more. So yeah, so the way, so like I had mentioned, BloodHound wasn't designed to do this kind of check, but there is a roundabout way to get this done. And so what I found is that we actually have to see if let's see, let me stretch this chart way out to help illustrate this. And let's see, I'll turn my snap mode off. Okay. And let's see what else. Okay, so we have, okay, so I'm going to use the diamond here. So A is our high price. So we have A up here. All right, so A is way up here, the high price of the bar. So I'm going to be working on this bar here where the arrow is pointed. And we have A greater than B, and B is our closing price. So let me use a little dot down here. And so there is our closing price. I'm sorry, actually the closing price is up top there. So what we're, and so remember the lines here, the white lines represent 100% of the bar length. So the white lines, represent the total length of the bar, and it's 100%. And so what we're actually looking at is, oops, wrong line. Let me draw another line here. All right, so that line, I put it approximately 50%. And let me, there. All right, so we have this line. So that's about 50% between the top of the bar and the bottom of the bar. And so let me copy this and all right, so this red line, represents about 25% of the bottom half of the bar. All right. Okay, so here what we actually, so what the solver is looking for is we want A, so remember, so A is up here, the high price of the bar. So indicator A is the high price of the bar. So A is greater than B, and B is our closing price of the bar. So here's our closing price of the bar right there. And actually, I think that little circle is a little too thick, so let me just draw a little short white line here, and how about if I make it some kind of blue, okay, so here's the closing price of the bar. Alright, so let's go back to this again. So we have the high price is greater than the closing price by 75% of the bar. So yeah, so what we're doing is we're taking the total bar length, and we're saying that the high price has to be more than 75% of the length of the bar. And so this represents 75% of the bar length. So from the red line up to the top of the bar, right, that's 75% of the bar length. And we can see that the closing price is just under that 75% length. So we're actually making sure that, so what the solver is checking is that the high of the bar is more than 75% of the bar length away from the closing price. So it's actually kind of a roundabout way, as how we think of it, as humans, as we think of it, we think of it as 25%, of the low of the bar, 25% of the high of the bar, but the way that this actually is being accomplished in the comparison solver is that we're actually making sure that the high is more than 75% away from the closing price of the bar. That's not what I expected to find going into this, but I kind of wanted to illustrate to you guys at the same time that you really don't know you don't have to know exactly what you're doing when you're going into this. You can play around with it enough until you find the results that you want. And so you can just feel free to kind of play around with stuff here. So, all right, and so basically the kind of the same is going to be true for a short output here. So let's check these short outputs. And keep in mind that I have to reverse these outputs here. So the long outputs are going to be reversed to a short, and the short outputs are going to be reversed to a long at the final results. So when I look at the short outputs here, actually here, to keep this a little simple, how about if I just turn the long outputs off for now? Actually, here. Let's take the evaluate, and I'll set it to short only. So what I'm doing is I want to make sure that the close of the bar is near the top, 25%, when I get a short output here. And yeah, that looks good. All right, so now let's see. So now what I can do is use the long short modifier, plug that in there, and the long short modifier, its default state is swap, and that's what that's going to do. Let me turn on both the long and the shorts here. So the long short modifier is swapping the outputs, and now now I can see when the close is near the bottom of the bar, I'm getting a short, and when the close is near the top of the bar, I get a long here. And okay, I just need to figure out a good name for this. Okay, so that's one way to do it. And all right, so I see there's some people using the suggestion here, using the A equals B within. And remember, that was my originally started using that, and I wasn't quite sure if that was going to work, so I took the long route. However, I'll make another comparison solver, and I'll see if I can get this A equals B output to work. So actually, maybe that might be more efficient now that I give it a little more thought here, but we'll find out here in a moment. So let's drop another comparison down here. And okay, so I need to set both indicator A to price and set indicator B to price. And let's see. Okay, so for the longs, I'll set this to high. And the shorts, I'm going to set this to low. And let me clear my outputs. And I think this is the, so we'll try the A equals B output. And let's switch the measurement units to ATRs. And then set that value to 25% or 0.25. Oops, 25. There we go. 0.25. All right. Let's minimize those. There we go. 0.25 ATRs. And all right. Let's take a look. And that's actually looking pretty good. So, looks like that is a better way to do it. Yeah, let's see. Let me shrink the chart up here. So what I can do is just quickly connect each one and just look on the chart to see if there's any change in color. And I don't see any change in color, so it looks like they're both doing exactly the same thing. Yep. All right. So, yeah, so this A equals B within 25% is actually a better solution here because there's less objects on your workboard, so you don't need to use a long short modifier here. So, and I'm going to rename this guy here to shorten the name up. There we go. Okay, give that a name there. All right, so that does it. You know, kind of part of the reason why I took the long way is just to kind of illustrate, you know, don't think that you have to get something right the first time. You know, as you can see, it's very fast and easy to just play around with the solver settings, you know, until you get something, until you find something, you know, that's close to what you're looking for. And you know, when you're working with the comparison solver, sometimes what can help is to turn all your outputs off and just work with either the long side or work with the short output. You know, just work with one at a time. I think it's a little simpler to do that because that way you're just focusing on, you know, on just one of the outputs and not having to try and concentrate on or you know, look at two outputs. So it just makes it a little, simplifies things a little bit if you just work with either the long output or the short output, and then when you get something working, then you can turn the short output, you know, turn the other output on, and then make a complete, and do a, you know, a complete check to see if you're getting the results that you're hoping to look for. So, all right, let me take a look at some comments here, see if there's anything on this subject here. Yeah, it looks like you guys are getting this, handle this pretty good. I've got a lot of suggestions in here as to which output to use, so that's good. All right, I don't think I see any questions on this, but I do see some other questions here, so let's we'll move on to the next subject here. Erwin's asking a pretty simple question here. So yeah, I guess from time to time it's good to mention this little toolbar here on the left side of my charts here so I can just draw objects quickly. So this is very handy when working with BloodHound. So I can go in here and quickly mark stuff on my chart, so I can refer to it later. So this toolbar, can be downloaded on NinjaTrader's website. I think one of the NinjaTrader support guys posted this, probably wrote it and posted it up on NinjaTrader. And it's also available up on Big Mike's. And it's called the Toolbar Shortcut. Alright, so just search for Toolbar Shortcut on NinjaTrader or Big Mike's download area. Alright. And alright, so Max wants to enter up, so Max wants to get a signal on the second bar without any wick. Alright, so Max, does the first bar also need to have no wick, or is it just the second bar with no wick? And then Max wants to exit on the bar with a bar in the opposite direction. So I guess when we get a reversal bar here. All right. Okay. Let me switch my bar types here. All right. Let's use the Uniranko, and let's see. I'll set that to 2. Reversal size 12, and see what that does. All right, I think that's close enough. Alright, so that looks like that would be an entry since there's no wick, and that looks like that would be an entry with no wick, and it looks like this would be an entry with no wick. So let's see, yeah, if we're using the Uniranko, it looks like the first bar is always going to have a wick. So we'll just have to check the second bar for no wick here. All right. Let's slide that over. Okay, get BloodHound open again. All right, let me create a new logic template here. All right, so we're looking for the second bar with no wick. And let's see. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is just look for two bars in a row in the same direction here. So the first simple thing to do is we're going to look for the bar direction. Use the bar direction. And we want to make sure that there's 2 bars in the same direction. So we're going to look for number bars 2 in the same direction. And there we go. So we can see when we get to the second bar in the same direction, we get an output. And of course afterwards. But at least that's part of our condition is built there, requiring 2 bars in the same direction. And let's see, notice how BloodHound's, how the output from this solver kind of has this analog type of output. So if we want to clean this up and just get a nice clean digital type of output, we can set all or nothing. So there we go, there's all or nothing. So it looks a little cleaner on the output. Doesn't matter really which one you use, I don't think. Okay, so there's let's name this. So all right, 2 bars, direction, and okay. So now the second thing, let's see. So Max, here's another question for you. Does it need to be right after a reversal, or what happens if we get like, let me get my circle. Right here I got 2 bars with no wick, and so according to what you wrote, that should be an entry as well. Okay, so after a reversal there. Okay, so let's add in the reversal requirement here. So we're going to use the indicator inflection, right? So an inflection it's just a mathematical term for reversal point, or basically, actually, the correct term is an inflection is a change in direction. Is an inflection, and when dealing with charts, the only change in direction is either up or down. There is no left or right change in direction on a chart. So for our inflection, we want to look at the inflection of the price, the closing price of the bar. So we'll just set type to price and just leave the default close price on the long and short. And there we go. As we look at our chart, right, we get an output here, a short whenever price reverses down, a long whenever price reverses up. So there we go. So there's that part. Now, what I need to do, right, is I have a long output on this bar, but I need to get a long output on this bar, on the bar that actually has the signal here. So there's the bar that's going to have the signal, right? The second bar without a wick. So I need to get this output here over onto the next bar. And so one way I can do that is I can just increase my look back period to 2. And you can see that takes the it takes the inflection signal and just extends it out for 2 bars, like so. And so I now have a 2-bar direction solver here, and a price reversal. And let me name this here. So this is looking at the close price inflecting. So next, I'll join them together with an AND node, like so. Let's shrink this up a little bit. Alright, so we can see we're starting to get some results here. However, we can see that bars with wicks are being marked still. So we need to build another solver that checks to make sure there's no wick. So that's kind of the next thing we need to find here. So let's see, we'll work on here. Let me set the chart up to work right there. Alright, so let's work on that bar right there. One thing I can see about the style of this Renko bar is that when there's no wick, let's see here, right? When there's no wick, basically the open of the bar equals the low price. So the open price and the low price of the bar equal each other. Whereas on this bar, right, let me use a little dot here. So the dot is the open price of the bar, and my green arrow is pointing at the low price of the bar, and they don't equal each other. Right? There's a distance there. So to see if there's no wick, I can make sure that the open of the bar and the low of the bar equal each other. And the same thing for a down bar. I can make sure that the, let's see, grab another arrow here. I can make sure that the high of the bar and the open of the bar equal each other for a down bar. So what I'll be doing is I'll use a comparison to make that check. So let's see. Yeah. So we're going to compare the open of the bar to the high of the bar for down bars, and then over here for up bars we're going to compare the open price of the bar to we're going to compare the open of the bar to the low price of the bar to make sure there's no wick. Oh. Alright, so let's grab a comparison solver here. So indicator A, I'm going to set that to the open price. Set them both to the open price. And indicator B, set that to price. And let's see, so for a long, so let's see, up bars are going to be a long, so for an up bar we're looking at the low price. So let's set this long to the low price of the bar, and then for the short is going to be the opposite. We'll look at the high price of the bar. And let's see, let's turn my outputs off here. And let's see, so this isn't quite what we want, right? So we can see here that for these up bars it's actually identifying when we have wicks. So let's see, so I'm going to turn those outputs off, and I think we want to use A equals B, like so, and there we go. Yeah, so now when we have an up bar, when there's no wick, we're getting a long output. And any bar that does have a wick, there's no output. Alright, so I think that's working good. So let's check these down bars here. Alright, so switching back over. And let's scroll down. Okay, so for the short outputs, remember I had turned them all off previously. So let's put a 1 in the A equals B here. And take a look at the chart now. Okay, that looks good. Wicks are not being marked. No wick bars are being marked with an output. Okay, so I think that's looking good. So let's shrink that chart up here. Okay, so here's the first part that we built, and there we go. So we have this wick being marked, and so as soon as we connect this solver in, there we go. That eliminated that signal, and it eliminated the long signal here on this bar that had a wick. Okay, so let's see. Let's give this a name here. Alright, I'll just call it no wicks. Okay, let's just do a few more spot checks on the chart here. And good. So no signal there. We have a little wick. And yep, no wick. So a signal, there is a wick, no signal. All right, so far so good. And yep, we have a wick here. Yeah, no signal because there's a wick right there. Wick right there, no signal. And there we go, no wick, so there is a signal. Okay, I think everything looks good. All right, so there's the first part of Max's question. And now let's see. So Max would also like to see kind of an exit signal for this. So let's name this our entry here, like so. And we'll create a new logic template here for the exit here. Alright, so this is going to be an exit on the bar reversal. So all we need to do is I can use the closing inflection solver that I had already built. All right, so let me go back to the entry logic template. So this solver here that's looking at the inflection, basically it's looking at the closing price reversing or the bar direction reversing. So I can actually use this as my exits. So I'm going to go to my existing nodes here, and I can just use this closing price inflection for the exit signals. No. And that's right. So I had set this to actually look at, to extend forward for 2 bars, and I guess for this system it's not gonna matter if we get 2 exit signals, right? Because your position can only be exited once, right? You can't exit the position on the second bar because you're flat. So having two exit signals isn't going to make or break the system. It's not going to make a difference. But if we wanted to just if we just wanted to make it look clean, I can just create another inflection solver here. But I'm just going to modify the name of this inflection solver so I know it's actually extending forward for 2 bars. And so let me go back to my exit logic template here. And so if I wanted to make this look clean here, I can just set this up to see when the closing price reverses. So, and good enough. And if I want, I can just label this so I know that I'm using it for the exit signals. Right? So, alright, so the way this is going to work is, let's find a entry signal here. Okay, so this bar here, would be our entry signal. So let's switch this over here, right? So we're looking at our entry on the second bar with no wick. So there's our entry signal. So we're short. And now let's look at the exit signals here. And so price reversed, and so we get a long output to exit this short position. So this short entry signal would put us short, and a long output is what will exit your short position there. All right, Max, so that's it. Pretty simple there. So let me, I'll leave it on the entry logic here so you can take a look again. Okay, so Frank is saying, using the previous strategy as an example, there is both an exit strategy and a profit stop loss target specified. Do they conflict? Let's see. No. So Frank, okay, yeah. So Frank's asking a good question here. Let's go back. Let's see. All right. Yeah, I need to switch my bar type here to get this working. Yeah, I'm just going to put it on the Pro Ranko just to get something built real quick. Okay, so here are the entry signals here. All right, so let me mark. And okay, so there's some entry signals. And let's show the exits here. Alright, so for example, right, there's our long entry signal, so we're long here. So Frank is asking, if when we're using Raven, what happens if we have a profit target, and a stop loss set in Raven, and we have an exit signal. So let's pull up Raven here. All right, so in Raven, you can have a profit target and a stop loss, and of course in Raven you can have an exit logic here. So if we were to use this system here, let's go ahead and load it up. There's today's workshop, and I'll set Raven to the entry logic there. So okay, it looks like everything's connected correctly. Right, and so we'll set our entry logic to the entry second bar, and we'll set our exit logic to the exit template here. And then the next thing is, what if we say, okay, we want a 20 tick profit and a 15 tick stop loss. So, is there any, so Frank is asking, is there any conflict between like this stop loss and the exit signal that we see on the chart? Right? So the white arrow, kind of represents being in a long position. So what happens if we get an exit signal and we also have a stop loss? So the way Raven's going to work is whichever happens first, happens, and then all the other, well, no, that actually, I just caught myself. So Raven will submit an OCO for your profit and your stop loss. So these are the only two orders sitting out there. Now, if an exit signal comes along, right, so this short output here is our exit signal. So if this exit signal comes along, what happens is Raven will cancel your profit and your stop loss. It'll cancel that OCO and then close the order out. So it'll just close it out, using a market order. It'll just flatten the position with a market order. So with Raven, you've got kind of three. You could loosely say that you have three. There are really three conditions, but I guess loosely you could say there's three orders, right? So we have a profit order, that's one. Stop loss orders, two, and then an exit signal, that's a potential third order. And it's basically whichever one happens first will affect your position, and then the others just get canceled. However, technically, our exit signals, those aren't orders. Those only get executed in real time, and so an exit logic, it's not a stop loss, and it's not a profit target. It's a flatten. So think of your exit logic as saying flatten everything. That's really what an exit does. Is it just flattens the position. And so whenever you flatten a position, you also cancel your profit and stop OCO. All right, Frank. So I hope that provides a good explanation there. Okay, so all right. So Frank is asking, and so if either the profit or stop is hit, does that reset the exit? No, because exits never have a reset. Exits are exits are basically condition signals on the chart, but an exit flattens your position. So if you're already flat, so if you had your profit target hit, so let's take this short here, right? So if we had this short right here, and you had your profit target hit right there, so basically you're flat. So you're flat, and these other bars build, you're flat, and then you get an exit signal. Well, if you're flat, there's nothing to exit, so nothing happens, right? It's an exit, or maybe we should rename it to flatten. No, that just doesn't sound right. But yeah, and you can't exit a position if you're already flat. There's just nothing to exit there. So that's what would happen, Frank. Is your profit target gets hit, and this exit signal comes along, but Raven says, "Oh, I'm flat, so there's nothing to exit," and it just gets ignored. Okay, so Gary's asking for an example of how to use BloodHound with third-party indicator plots. So, yeah, so Gary wants to know, how can he use BloodHound with an indicator that he didn't write. So sure, I can give you an example. So a third-party indicator hopefully is written just like any other indicator, but since NinjaTrader it's very powerful in that it's written on C#, and NinjaTrader allows you to use any kind of C# programming methods within NinjaTrader. There's Ninja doesn't apply any kind of limitations to what type of C# code you can use. So what that means is that third-party indicator writers can do all kinds of things with their indicators, and so there's really kind of no way to know if BloodHound could read that indicator or not, because since a programmer can use any kind of C# coding they want, they could make an indicator visible and do all kinds of neat things on the chart, but they can also hide that information from BloodHound. So but hopefully most programmers follow NinjaTrader's programming practices when they're writing their indicators. So for example, right, there's all these ANA indicators, and these ANA indicators are available from Daniel Rowe's website, or you can get them off of Big Mike's. So for example, let's see, okay, so here's one. The ANA ADXVMA comes up a lot. So let's put that on the chart here. And let's see, I'm going to turn the bar coloring off. Let's see, where is that? There we go. Okay, so we can see the ADX VMA indicator on here. So if I want to know if I can read that, you know, in BloodHound, typically what I'll do, okay, I'm going to create a new logic template here. So if I'm going to test a third-party indicator, the first solver I usually go for is the threshold solver. And the reason why I use the threshold solver is because I can check to see if there's a value greater than 0 or less than 0 with the threshold solver pretty easily, right? So, like for example, this ANA ADX VMA, you know, I can see the price flag over here, and it's 58.72. So that's telling me what the value is of that plot. So, you know, a value of 58.72, you know, it's going to be greater than 0, and so I can use the threshold solver to just generate an output. If BloodHound detects some kind of value from this plot that's on my chart. So next step I'll do is go in here and find that indicator. So there's that indicator, and so here's the plot. Here's the ADX VMA, the plot. So I'll select that like that, and I'm just using a period 6. So on the chart I'm using a period 6 as well. And so then the next thing I can do is I'll just put a 1 in the long output there, and bingo. This long output tells me that BloodHound's able to read that plot that I just selected. And I can go back into the indicator. And I can see also the indicator has this data series trend. So if I want to see if BloodHound can read that, I'll switch this over like so. And yeah, so there we go. So I can see that it looks like when the indicator turns blue. Here, let me make this the plot, the line width a little thicker so you guys can see this a little easier. There we go. Alright, so just to kind of back up again. So from this, you know, ANA ADX, you know, third-party indicator, right, I have the trend selected here, this trend data series selected, and I can see that when the line is blue, I'm getting an output. So, right, so BloodHound's able to read that when this turns blue. So that tells me when this line is blue, you know, that trend, that data series trend has an output that's greater than 0. And let's see, when the indicator is pink, you know, let's see, we'll use the short output down here. So if this data series trend is less than 0, so we don't know what value is held inside this data series, because you can't see a data series on the chart, but that data series could have negative values in it. So a negative value would be less than 0. So I can set my short output like that, and you know, lo and behold, when the line turns pink, that tells me that there's a negative value in there, and BloodHound can read it. So that's kind of what that's the first step I go through in testing third-party indicators here. So, all right, Gary. So that's basically, you know, what I would suggest you start doing. You can just take the solver like this and just put a 1 here in the long output. So greater than A, put a 1. And for the short output, if it's less than E, put a 1. And then just go in here and set your indicators up. You know, and you can just go through and test all the different plots and data series and whatever else it might have there. All right. Okay, so Gary is asking, can BloodHound see objects or text drawn on the chart? No, it can't. There's no NinjaScript way of doing that. So NinjaTrader has not provided any kind of built-in method for detecting objects on the chart here like that. So we're kind of hoping that Ninja 8 will do something like that. So there are roundabout ways to do that, you know, but they're fairly complex. So we will get around to, you know, writing code to do that, but that's going to be later on. So it's probably going to be, you know, BloodHound version 2 that'll have that capability to be able to, you know, read little chart objects like that. So that's not going to be a simple task unless NinjaTrader 8 provides a way to read this stuff. So we're crossing our fingers here. So hopefully Ninja 8 will simplify that process. So, but for right now, there's no built-in way into Ninja to do that. All right. So Gene is kind of going back to the previous question about Raven. So Gene would like to know, can we set an exit? Let's see. Yeah, set an exit on a bar reversal and a profit of 10 ticks. You bet. Yep. So to do that, Gene, let's see. Let's okay. So I set the BloodHound to the entry signals here, the entry logic. All right, so there's a short entry signal there. So if we bring up Raven and let me load up the BloodHound file here. So go to File, and there's today's workshop. And I'll just take a look at the entries. Okay, so there's our entry. That looks good. And I'm going to take a look at the exits, make sure the exits look good. That looks good. Okay. Put it back on the entries. So we'll set our entry logic to our entry template. Set our exit logic to our exit template. And so if you want a 10 tick profit, just put 10 ticks like so. You can leave your stop loss at 0 if you don't want a stop loss. And so Raven will either Raven will submit, you know, a 10 tick profit target, and then if Raven gets an exit signal, then it'll just flatten the position at whatever kind of loss or profit that you're at. Basically, the exit logic here. So the exit signals just flatten the position wherever the position's at. They just get flattened like that. So there you go, Gene. That's how you do that. And just to expand upon that, of course, if you want to use an ATM, then when you build your ATM, you would define your ATM to use a 10 tick profit target. So, and then this exit logic would just basically, it would cancel the ATM orders and then flatten the position. So that's how Raven would handle an ATM, right? Is first thing is you cancel any outstanding ATM orders, and then you flatten the position after that, and that's what Raven would do. All right, so Frank is asking, is the next entry signal recognized because technically the exit didn't happen? So here's how Raven operates. So when Raven is evaluating your entry signals, so let's see, let's close this out. Right, so we can see on the chart here, here's all the entry signals here. So let's see, this actually isn't a good example. Here's a good example. Okay, great. Okay, so we have two short signals here. So, Raven's going to, put you short on the first signal, and right, so we're in a short position, and by the time we get to this bar with the next short entry signal, if your short position is still open, then Raven just ignores that short position. It just ignores it. So Raven will only put on one position at a time. So Raven's not going to keep submitting short orders, right? It's going to wait until your position is flat, and then it would submit another short entry. So it doesn't. So if there was no, okay, and let's also say that there was no exit position, right? So if there was no exit position, then that means that your position is still open. So if your short position is still open, then Raven just ignores the second one here. Yeah, so Raven would just ignore that one if your position is still open. So, however, if you did, get an exit on this reversal, then that means you're flat. So that means you would be flat. And so if you're flat, then Raven will take, this next short entry there. Frank is saying, in other words, I presume two entries in opposite directions cannot occur. Correct. Your broker won't allow that. Your broker won't allow you to have a long position and a short position open at the same time, unless they're in different accounts. So, and Raven can only trade one account at a time. So you could have two instances of Raven running and have them set to two different account numbers, so you could have opposite positions open at the same time. But let's just kind of stick with normal. Most people only have one account with a broker, so your broker won't allow you to have a short and a long position open at the same time. So that's kind of a so that's how that would work on the broker side. However, Raven would reverse you. So let's see, so moving on, right? So in this case, if we're short right here, we're short like this, and then we get a entry in the opposite direction, what's going to happen is Raven is just going to reverse you and put you long. So Raven will close your short, it'll flatten your short, and then it'll enter a long position there. Okay, yeah, so Frank is saying, so in the previous example, the profit or stop flattened the position, not the exit. So will the next entry be detected? So yes, yes. So hopefully I think I basically kind of already answered that for you there, Frank. So the bottom line is Raven will only enter a position if you're flat, or if you're in a position, Raven will only enter a new position if it's in the opposite direction. So Raven will only put on a position, open a new position if it's flat, or if Raven is reversing your position. So Raven will never open two positions in the same direction. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me, and have a good rest of your Friday, and have a great weekend, and I hope to see you guys next week.